In 1991, the Sega Genesis got its very own port of Pit Fighter, the Atari Games developed arcade brawler that used digitized graphics and sound. The port wasn't very good, though it did retain some of the fun factor of the source material, especially where multiplayer was concerned. This was a time before Street Fighter II had made its way home, so the expectations of fighting games on consoles had yet to hit the heights it would in the following years. Pit Fighter sold well, which prompted the publisher Tengen to commission a Part 2. It started development by the same company that did the first Pit Fighter on the Genesis, Sterling Silver Software, which had undergone a name change and was now called Polygames. Pit Fighter 2 was demonstrated at multiple gaming conventions and covered by magazines, with a fourth quarter 1993 release date planned. For some reason, that never happened and the game was cancelled, never to be heard from again. That was until just recently when a playable prototype was found. In this episode, we are going to take a look at it, see how things changed from the original, and see if it's worth your time to try it out today. Hope you guys enjoy my look at Pit Fighter 2 for the Sega Genesis. Unlike the first game, Pit Fighter 2 is not a port of an existing arcade game. Well, not really. It does use assets from the arcade beat-em-up Guardians of the Hood, a game that itself used digitized visuals, but those assets have been pared back so heavily they are hardly recognizable. Make no mistake, however, this remains very much a Pit Fighter. The goal is still to win as much money as possible while beating the absolute hell out of all that oppose you. Returning from the first game are Buzz, Tai, and Kato, now joined by 4 new fighters, each with their own moves to learn. There's Tanya the Roller Queen, Connor the Karate Champ, Chief the Bodyguard, and Javier of the Foreign Legion. That's 4 competitors total, a big step up from the meager 3 of the original. The same goes for the computer-controlled competitors you'll face. You get some returning from the first game, but you also get some newcomers that intend to do you all sorts of harm. The familiar backdrops of the first return, along with a few new ones like a funhouse, a theater, a subway, and the city streets. Gameplay is a near carbon copy of the first game right down to the button configuration. The standard layout is punch, kick, and jump, with various combinations doing things like special moves, ducking, evading, blocking, and jump kicking. Unfortunately, there is no 6-button controller support in this prototype, which could have helped immensely, so you'll be pressing 2 and 3 buttons together regularly. On the plus side, multiplayer returns so you can smash heads together with a buddy. And that's pretty much it. Though we get some new fighters, competitors, and stages, Pit Fighter 2 is incredibly lean on content otherwise. In fact, it's more a Pit Fighter 1.5 than anything, a mild expansion of the first Genesis port. It is important to remember that this is an unfinished prototype and more content could have been added in the final months of development, but considering the October 1993 target, I cannot say I would have expected a ton of changes. For those curious, the prototype does have some major issues in regards to playability. The grudge matches that involve the winner knocking down his opponent 3 times don't work properly, and result in your defeat every time. I also could not get the special moves to connect with the 4 new fighters. The animation is there, but they do not result in a hit and damage taken. You will also run into a level after about a dozen matches where there is no opponent and you're stuck with nothing to do. None of that should come as a surprise given the game's unfinished state, but keep it in mind nonetheless. Finally, the options menu is accessible by pressing A at the title screen, which allows you to change the difficulty, language, and even listen to a sound test. I am not a fan of the first Genesis Pit Fighter when it comes to its visuals. It was so heavily cut back it looked like a different experience, and that is the case here as well. Again, important to keep in mind that it's a prototype, but it appears to use the same engine as the first game with very few improvements. The new stages have more color, but that's hardly a flex considering how badly they looked before. And those original stages are still here, of course, as ugly as ever. I can forgive the trash pixels that appear all over some of the fighters, but again, the sprites are tiny compared to both the arcade games from which it pulls its inspiration. Overall, the color use is weak. The animation is overly fast and incredibly simple. No real effort was being made to improve the visuals, and again, I stressed that this was targeted for an October 1993 release, so I highly doubt we were going to see any major strides made to improve a game that was clearly using the same development strategies of the original port. You have to remember that should this have made its release date and actually became a retail product, it would have been after Street Fighter II Special Champion Edition. In that light, I can totally see why Tengen cancelled it and avoided being overshadowed by a clearly superior product. If I had to hazard a guess, I would say this stayed in development a lot longer than intended and was initially meant to come out much sooner in 1993. All those guesses aside, Pit Fighter 2 is just as ugly as the original, prototype or not. One area that seems to be entirely a placeholder is the sound. Most of the sound effects and music you'll hear are from the original game. It wasn't particularly great there, so you already know how I feel about it. My biggest problem with the prototype is without question the gameplay. This is exactly how the first Pit Fighter played, and even though that had its moments of fun, I cannot say I wanted to see it again unchanged. And that's exactly what it is, unchanged. Is it possible that all the planned additions had yet to make its way into this prototype? Absolutely. A lot can happen in game development in just a few short months, but we have to go by what we already have in regards to answering, is this worth your time today? And to that, I say your opinion of the first Pit Fighter on the Genesis matters a whole hell of a lot here. If you hate that game, you're gonna hate this. It's just as funky in nearly every respect, and I cannot imagine a few new fighters and stages are gonna change your mind. Now, if you love Genesis Pit Fighter, you absolutely have to play this. What I just said will apply to you on the opposite end of the spectrum. You'll love the presentation and the gameplay will feel like sliding into a pair of your favorite gloves. From my own personal perspective, I found this unfinished game to be going in a highly disappointing direction. The people developing it seem to be focused on using the first game as a basis and just adding content to it. It was meant to be released on a 16 megabit cartridge, but you wouldn't know that was the case apart from the new stages and characters. That leaves us with a pretty simple conclusion. If you love Genesis Pit Fighter, grab yourself a copy of the prototype here and enjoy. If you hated Genesis Pit Fighter, steer clear because it's essentially more of the same. I want to stress again that despite all my guesswork and opinions, this is an unfinished ROM dated from April 1993. We likely had 3 to 4 months of solid development time still to go, and a lot can happen in that time. That's one of the more exciting things about this, to be honest. I would love for a more up-to-date prototype to be found so we can see exactly how things were progressing. It would be incredible to see what those extra months may have brought. As a fan of retro games, I still advise you take a look at this just to see a bit of gaming history, particularly if you are familiar with Pit Fighter and Guardians of the Hood in the arcade. It's a mix of those games, and since the latter was never ported to a home console, it's as close as you'll get to a 16-bit version of it. With any luck, more prototypes of lost games will show up in the years to come, giving us all a little more to appreciate as we get older, even when it's the likes of Pit Fighter 2. I'm Sega X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.